The Informer is a pro-choice news organisation. We support the right for self-determination and the rights of Victorians and Australians to voice their concerns against mandatory vaccinations or any other government policy. But yesterday's protest did nothing to advance the protesters' cause. Marching in protest against mandatory vaccinations is a cause of passions, and it's a right. But what isn't right is to desecrate a sacred site like Melbourne's Shrine of Remembrance. The Shrine is a site that represents freedom. It's a site that honours the men and women who fought and died for all Australians to be free, and must be respected and always honoured. And it's a site that represents the very essence of what protesters are protesting for: freedom of choice and freedom of voice. Marching to the Shrine of Remembrance wasn't the issue, but to dishonour the fallen and the sacredness of it by urinating on the shrine is deplorable, reprehensible and utterly unacceptable. Yesterday, protesters did more to damage their cause than to help it. They abused the right of privilege to protest because their actions abused the memories of the men and women who died and why they served. Now, if marching to the shrine was meant to be a symbolic gesture, a gesture that would signify the very reason why protesters are fighting for their freedoms and rights of choice, then the very point they tried to make and use the shrine to do it was lost with their actions and disrespect to the fallen and violate the shrine. To have protested peacefully and gathered at the steps of the shrine without stepping foot on the grounds and observed in silence what the shrine represents would have been a great symbolic gesture. It could have strengthened their cause and driven home a message to Daniel Andrews that Victorians are prepared to fight for their rights and freedoms and not just sit back and allow them to steal what the men and women, which the shrine represents and honours, actually fought for. The right for every Victorian and Australian to have freedom of choice, self-determination, informed consent and to be free of tyranny. But instead, whoever amongst the protesters decided to conduct themselves in the manner they did should be charged. Dan Andrews and Shane Patton should also be embarrassed and ashamed by their actions and what they are initiating. Actions to use police as pawns of a despotic regime. By instructing Victoria Police's riot squad to stand on a sacred site like the Shrine, a place of peace and hope, with military weapons pointed at Australians was an act of domestic terror, especially when police under the Westminster system turned their guns on the citizens of the state protesting government policy. Now, Dan Andrews has proven himself to be a despot, and Shane Patton appears to have allowed himself to become politicised. Had protesters marched to the shrine without stepping foot on it and behaved in a manner that was dignified, the optics of guns being pointed at Australians while protesting in peace would have embarrassed the Andrews government, could have won the protesters' support and highlighted the very reason Dan Andrews and Shane Patton are not only incapable of leading Victoria, but should step down. Yesterday was a day of deplorable behaviour by all involved, and it was a sad day for Victoria.